What's good, everybody? We are lit, we live, we here, back with another episode of the 623 podcast, a podcast about waking up to new ways of thinking about fighting games. Of course, I am ATL Ryan, joined here by Nicholas the God. How's it going, Nick?
Yo, yo, what's up?
Okay, it's Ree. And we're just coming off of our first podcast, which if you haven't already, tune into that episode. You can find it on our 623 SoundCloud and Basement X Gaming accounts, YouTube channel as well, where we talked about the comeback game plans or mindset. Right, but today we're going to be talking about the opposite spectrum, really with battling complacency, which essentially is, of course, as I mentioned, the opposite of the comeback mindset, where you're keeping your lead, essentially. So today, gonna be talking about how to effectively keep your lead. We're gonna be talking about what happens when we're faced with complacency, the psychological aspect of complacency in fighting games, and solving the complacency problem. To start us off, gonna recall some funny game moments in history where people at really any level got caught being too complacent. Did you have any history matches in mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few, and people tuning in might be able to think of some right off the bat. Just hearing the word complacency or getting too comfortable, or teabagging, I guess.
Yeah.
But um, one that comes to mind, right off the bat, the classic, Daigo versus Justin. Um, and I wouldn't even say it was like complete complacency on Justin's part. Like when they're standing quite a few feet away, and Justin goes for the chip kill, but Daigo, as everyone knows, goes for the infamous Chun Li super parry
Yeah.
into a direct kill. Um, I think Justin, he clearly had a game plan. He knew it was going to kill, but he just didn't know Daigo had that dog in him, I guess.
True.
So, um, I mean, maybe a little bit of complacency, but really, when we do get comfortable, even the slightest, who knows what our opponents are capable of. But if you haven't seen that, definitely check out Evo Moment 37, a classic, a true fighting game classic. Um, right. What moments could you remember or recall? Uh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, so pretty much funny enough, this is also Evo. Evo 2015. It was it's a year Exit Rev 2 top 8, I want to say. Ogawa versus Woshige, a very classic moment in history. Of course, everybody. I already said the name, so everybody is already knowing what I'm gonna say. But to paint the picture for either people who aren't sure, people who are, or for the audience as well, pretty much Ogawa, being a Zato player, he went for a mix-up and got the hit low. Washige bursts, and of course now bursting Ogawa into the corner. Washige ran up. And with punished, I think it was Nobiru, I want to say that what move was, with far slash, and then confirmed with double super to win the round. Now, of course, this is the second round, and Ogawa was up, so now we're going into round 3. But for some odd reason, Moshige thought the game was over and took the set over Ogawa. So he stood up, celebrated, and it was like a joyous, peaceful celebration too. Like, bro was just like really, really in it, really passionate, and then turns around and is like, wait a minute, and then sprints back to the setup. Ogawa was not having any of it. Immediately around start 2H, goes for a fat combo. I want to say it was like 70%, and then goes for a mix up after that, and then gets the kill. So basically, Washige celebrates too early and gets punished by getting two touched. He immediately fell on the table and just had no words. I mean, he was laughing. He seemed pretty happy, but it is a moment where you look back and you laugh, but in the moment he's probably just like, damn, I really just did that. Um, Another moment that comes to mind is, funnily enough, same scenario, which is funny. Happened earlier this year, Comic in 2024. Sorry, I had to bring it up again, but it happened, so you gotta hold that. Killer Kobe versus Monarch in Blaze Blue Central Fiction top 8. Of course, it was a very close set. Killer Kobe, definitely squeezed out a win in game two to bring it to 1-1. Of course, I want to say this is winner semis, I think. And then once again, game three had the game winning combo and popped off a little bit too early, but not only that, but popped off a little bit too hard. Drops their stick, and the stick hits the RC macro on the super, that which would have been the game winning combo. And before the camera cuts away, you can literally see the RC animation play out, and it was just funny. I think the commentator even called it out too. But they both dared each other up. Killer Kobe got up, celebrated. Monarch stood up and looked back at the screen and said, "Wait a minute, I'm not dead. I'm gonna." He did one of those things. He hit the controller and he didn't even sit down. He just killed him.
That's crazy.
He didn't even sit down. He just killed him. So yeah, those are two moves that come to mind when it comes to now. Granted, those aren't the when it comes to complacency, right? Um, those aren't specific to Complacency itself, but more so of not being locked or because granted we said Complacency a few times, but I think there are a few more avenues that can play in effect when it comes to keeping your lead and be able to secure a win, right? But I guess with that being said, Nick, would you like to take care of what exactly is complacency? We've said it quite a few times already within this episode, but for people who don't understand what it means, you want to elaborate on what exactly in hindsight does it mean?
Yeah, sorry, I want to bring up
Oh, you're good.
one more moment because I feel like OG Street Fighter players will remember this whenever the topic of complacency comes up. Um, Ricky Ortiz versus Wolf Crone in Street Fighter 4. This this was the peak of complacency, and it was such a funny clip. And just for reference too, we'll be showcasing those clips in the YouTube version of this podcast. So if you want to rewatch this, um, on our YouTube, the clips will show in case people don't know what we're talking about. But Ricky Ortiz versus Wolf Crone. Wolf Crone plays, or he played Sea Viper, and Ricky played the fat guy. Oh my goodness, Rufus. And basically, long story short, Wolf Crone had the game-winning kill, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it was a scaled combo. So he didn't know if it was, or he was certain that it would kill, but I think he forgot that it was scaled. So the combo he did was supposed to kill, but because it was scaled, it didn't. So what happened was, as the super was going off, because there's a super animation going off, he stands up, the classic stand up, and he is similar to Washiga. He's celebrating, and he soon realizes, oh shoot, I got to sit down. I got to get back into the match. He's not dead yet, and then he gets back into the match. Luckily, uh, in time, in, unlike Washige, and Ricky just goes into flow state and just comes back, goes for two grabs, takes him out, and Ricky Ortiz stands up and starts yelling at him like, "What are you standing up for?" And yeah, that was the moment, classic moment. Um, but yeah, so in terms of complacency, just for context, so imagine yourself in any match, whether it's a match of your own that you've played before, or a match that that we're recalling right now. So like Daigo versus Justin or Wolf Crone versus Ricky. Just imagine yourself in that scenario. You can see and feel that you have the upper hand. Um, and then one of these three options typically happens to you. One, you suddenly start to be overcome with overconfidence and ego. I know we've all been through this. We become untamable in some cases, where we have the upper hand, we have so much health, we have so much bar, um, and we know success is right around the corner. At these peak moments, players are often committing to extremely high risk actions, to flaunt, show off, to teabag. We all know those players who love to teabag when they're up. Um, so that's one scenario. So being overcome with confidence and ego. Second one, some people become a little bit too relaxed, quite sluggish, very slow, um, and they start to act with no real intentions. They're kind of just circling the room, and that's all they're doing. Nothing's really going on in the head, um, and you start to form patterns in your gameplay in regards to defense or offense. And with these 2 points in mind, I want to bring up an example that not a lot of people know, but it's been going on through history. And what better example to bring up than um, the Roman Empire? I don't know if everyone knows about the Roman Empire and what significance it has, but basically, long story short, I don't want to go into a long rant, but Roman Empire reigned for hundreds of years, big dogs for hundreds of years, but they got way too complacent. Uh, they thought they were invincible. They started to prioritize wealth, power, and luxury, which attracted um, outside forces, outside threats. Like they wanted in on these luxuries too. Uh, they totally thought that their past achievements were enough, and they came to a point where like they stopped innovating. And in the end, they failed to adapt to external threats, and a large group of barbarians just swept them, and that pretty much ended the Roman Empire. And why do I bring this up? Well, because this is just peak complacency, and it's been going on for so long. We're not exempt from it in fighting games. It happens in life. It's happened in history. It'll keep coming back. How do we avoid this? And this brings us to the third point in complacency in a match. And this is what I call the great, uh, on the flip side of the once great Roman Empire. This is the great realization. So, just a short recap. So, one of which, in a match, you're either overcome with ego, or two, you become a little bit too relaxed, or three, which is what we hope people walk away from this podcast and learn to adopt. Players become hyper aware that complacency can strike them at any moment. And this is very hard to do in a match when, in the heat of battle, and when so many things are happening, when mental stack is prevalent, when you're feeling all sorts of emotions. But what can really turn the tide is simply becoming aware that complacency can strike you at any moment. And at this point in time, when you are aware that complacency can be present, decisions must be calculated, um, with recognition that one wrong decision can lead to your ultimate downfall. And similar to the moments that we've recalled previously, all it took was just one moment. And we've emphasized this in the previous podcast. All it takes is one, right? Um, so third point, becoming hyper aware that complacency can strike at any moment. And not to be scared of complacency, but to embrace the idea that it can come about, but you take your stand and you start thinking about ways to overcome it in the moment. Very hard to do, but it starts with awareness, and that's what we want people to walk away from this podcast. Ryan, did you have anything to mention off these points?
Not with those, no. But I will say, just a side point, before I get to a point where I can't really bring it up anymore, just in case. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
like I mentioned earlier, like complacency is part of it, but when dealing with situations like these, of course, and we bring home the fact with this entire podcast, the premise is the mental warfare, right? So on one hand, yeah, complacency could be a reason as to why someone might not be able to secure a win, secure a round, secure a game. But I know we talk a lot about ego as well. But the lack thereof, really, or lack of confidence. Sometimes, maybe you hit a combo that you thought was gonna kill and it didn't, so now you're scrambling, right? Or now, you're just like, you drop the combo, they're like at 5% life and you're up and you're just like afraid. But I keep bringing up this fact that it's just the experience is going to take you far, right? So putting yourself in that scenario is going to be something that's going to help you kind of still be able to maintain your mental in that scenario where you have your opponent almost dead to rights, rather than you just kind of playing sluggish because you're afraid that you didn't get the kill, or so now you gotta like feel like you gotta scramble. But it's like, honestly, you don't really have to. Now now when you get used comfortable with that fact, then it might get hard for you to not get complacent, right? You might start hanging back, chilling. When it's like, we're not saying to kind of just sit back in the corner and wait for their opponent to come to you, but maybe hold your ground a bit more, right? Maybe just stand still and not let them into a zone or into a bubble, right? So little things like that can help you go a long way when you're trying to secure the life lead, right? Because that's really all what this is about. Like, of course, last week it was, trying to at least close the gap, right? But now it's, widening it essentially, right? Or to a certain degree. So that's kind of really all I want to really just hone in on that fact, especially from the standpoint of the Romans. They just thought, they were up. They're up, so we can just chill, right? But that's more reason to go harder, really. At least my standpoint on it. It's kind of about fixing your mental to go, you know, so what if we're winning? We can win more, right? Kind of having that hunger, having that passion. I think that's gonna really stand out more when you're trying to secure not even just like a life lead or anything like that, even like a skill gap, right? Trying to catch up in skill, something like that. Um, so I think having that mindset is gonna help you either widen or close a skill gap or widen a life lead, right? So that's really what we're gonna be honing on today. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the matter.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about, and we said this before too. You said put yourself in that situation, and this goes back to a previous point we made in the first episode or the previous episode, where where people who want to get better at the comeback game plan or get better at comebacks is to drill it. Hence, putting yourself in that situation, and it works the same way here too. Put yourself in a situation where your opponent has nothing and you have everything, and record yourself in those matches. See how you react. And this is very similar to the comeback podcast and a point. See how you do in those situations. It may seem like it's like you have the upper hand and it's unfair, but really it's a true test. Like how effective can you keep that advantage? In combat sports, we we specifically put ourselves in bad positions, but we also purposely put ourselves in good positions. Can you hold those good positions? Can you get out of those bad positions? These are all things that are imperative to the fight. And it's not just about putting yourself in a good position or a bad one. To But it's to really be ready for when you're actually put in those situations in a tournament match, in at Evo, at whatever tournament. So no, I'm grateful you brought up that point of putting yourself in those situations.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
think it's crucial to do, really, because like even when you brought up about the combat sports, right? About being able to keep a strong position. The only way you can know how, right, is to do it. You can't
exactly.
just. Now, I mean, granted, you could maybe VAR review somebody better and see what they do, but it's about the application of it, right? It's about how you want to, and then of course, I know we're gonna talk about this later as well, but sometimes the opponent that you're gonna fight in that scenario is not the opponent that is in the match that you watched, right? So
Yep.
like people are different, and um, that's just something that is just have to be, I don't want to like beat a dead horse,
Ready for it.
but yeah, I'm not. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but sometimes if it's to get the point across, then I mean it's got to be done,
Yeah. Um, which brings us to our next point, about the psychological warfare, as you talked about before. Not a lot of people talk about the psychological warfare that goes on in fighting games, because in a team game in comparison, you have the support of your colleagues, right? You have you have their second opinion. But in fighting games, what differentiates us is the fact that it's 1v1. You have your training circles, you have your training communities, but at the end of the day, it's just you on the stage, right?
Yeah,
And there's a lot that goes on the stage versus just being in training mode, just playing with your friends. There's a lot of mental warfare, and if you haven't felt that yet as a fighting game enthusiast, you got to put yourself in that situation, because competing is entirely different. You're not just playing the game; you're playing against your opponent, you're playing against yourself, and then you're playing the game. It's many battles at once. So this brings us to our next point of the psychological warfare. So think back to, and I invite people to think back to any situation where complacency was at hand. So in this case, maybe think back to Daigo versus Justin. When we repeatedly experience success in similar situations, so for example, like Ken versus Chun Li, maybe Justin uh, has often killed the opposite character in this particular situation. He just chip killed them with the super, and he's used to that. He's probably mentally telling himself, like, I've won in this situation before. I know what's going to happen. I can be comfortable. And we do this all the time, but we're not cognizant of it. Um, but like Justin, we may fail to remind ourselves that every situation is different, and so are every opponent we face, as you mentioned, right? And just like in combat sports, I mean, you may know how to get out of side control. You may know how to maintain mount, for example. If you guys don't know what those positions are, I welcome you to look them up. But mount is a supremely dominant position. So if you're on mount, a lot of people will think, okay, this guy's got the W. Or in fighting game terminology, like you have your opponent in the corner, right? I think that'd be a good comparison. If you have your opponent in the corner, usually it should be GG's for like it should be in your favor if you have them in the corner. But again, we fail to remind ourselves that every situation is different, and so are every opponent we face. Maybe our opponent is F Champ. I don't know if you guys have watched F Champ, but he's if you put him in the corner, it's definitely not game over. This guy's defense is impeccable, and I feel like he likes being put in the corner because people underestimate how good his corner game is. Just watch any of his Dulcim matches. He's you guys just got to watch it. Um, but with that being said, you don't know if your opponent, uh, you don't know how good they are. So you don't know how skilled they are. You don't know how disciplined they are. Give everyone their respect, and don't just let up in a potentially unforgiving situation. And once again, every situation is different. Would you say anything about that, Riot?
not specifically, but I did have a funny bit to say about the corners scenario actually, because
Mm-hmm.
I always tell uh, actual players that I coach. Mostly because obviously him being a zoner, you really don't want to have your back in the corner because that's
Mm-hmm.
usually where he doesn't have a lot of good buttons to match up with, right? Besides like 2K and maybe 5K depending on the matchup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very niche 2P scenarios, but nonetheless, right? I see a lot of actual players that get like a 2K hit and they'll do like 2K 2D and they'll do the typical BNB of doing 2H OTG into single flash, right? I mean, that's fine and dandy, sure, but you're still in the corner, right? But meanwhile, their opponent can just kind of just dash block and weasel their way into you. And I mean, maybe like 8 times out of 10, they're up on you in health, so they really don't have to do anything, right? Um, so what I teach them is 2K 2D for the knockdown, obviously since it's a sweep, and then IED out the corner, right?
I've seen you do that.
Yeah, exactly. Just ID out the corner. And it's also it doubles down because it save jumps as well as you can melee 2K all that stuff, right? Because people keep mashing there. I don't know why, but yeah, you can have more than one use for it. But the number one important thing is you're out the corner. But what I also tell them is if you're comfortable and you're actually good at playing against your opponent, you can just chill in the corner. Like a lot of times, I'll get the OTG right, and I'll just chill in the corner because I am absurdly confident that they're not going to do anything to me. Right, so yeah, of course the typical since I'm playing a zoner, people probably think I'm just gonna be like be mashing and be brainless and trying to like weasel my way out, but it's like I don't care, right? Because I know I've been playing for a while and I've come to learn the fact that a lot of people tend to play the same with the same options, so I kind of just know what to look for, right? So I'm very confident in my ability to defend myself in the corner, and if I don't, then obviously I'll just do the better idea, which is just get out, right? So I just think it was funny the fact that you brought up Elf Champ, kind of just welcoming their opponent into the corner because I sometimes do the same thing because a lot of times I'm just not really afraid. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about that fact.
Yeah, I want to bring up F Champ again because if people tuning in don't understand how he plays and how good he is in the corner, as a fighting game enthusiast, you definitely should see his corner game. It's it challenges the traditional idea of don't put yourself in the corner, right? Um, which is what a lot of fighting games will, or a lot of fighting game players will teach you. But again, he welcomes that disadvantage because it on the mental side it welcomes overconfidence, and I think he does an excellent job of taking advantage of his opponent and their overconfidence when they have when they have him in the corner. But that's another topic for later about how good F Champ's defense is. Um, but next, I want to talk about on the topic of being comfortable. Uh, we see this a lot in people learning fighting games, especially in a tournament scenario. But the more often we experience the comfort of victory, so whether you've won a lot of casual matches or you're winning against your friends a lot, or you're winning a lot of matches in floor 10 and Guilty Gear Strive, the more we crave it, the more rightfully so. You're used to victory and it feels good. It doesn't not feel good unless you win in a scummy way, but overall victory feels good. This craving, though, as a result, can easily make us prioritize that comfort feeling, and that's what's dangerous. Um, because then we resort to craving victory instead of the feelings needed to maintain it. And circling back to the Romans, I mean, the more we crave luxury, the more we crave victory, the more we crave our past accolades. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere. We're we're going to get destroyed by the barbarians. We're going to get destroyed by better players. We're we're stuck on floor 10 for a reason because we're way too comfortable with the people that we're fighting in floor 10. We know we can beat them. Um there's only one way up. You got to fight better people and you got to be able to be comfortable with fighting better players and not be complacent in floor 10, for example, or be complacent in gold rank in Street Fighter 6 or whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about, but don't be complacent in a certain rank. Always strive for uh you know getting better in any which way you want. It doesn't have to be a big jump. It doesn't have to be from like gold to master. There's chase the small wins, chase the small victories, and maintain them. That's why we said in the last episode, learn to have fun with losing instead of thinking it as either you're winning or losing. When players start jotting down key learnings and start working on each opportunity individually. So, for example, like um, if I have trouble with a certain combo and I keep dropping it in tournament or in competitive matches, that's I shouldn't get salty because I'm constantly dropping it. That's a call to action. That's a call to action to evaluate okay, why am I messing up this combo? I can hit it in training mode, but I can't hit it in tournament. There has to be a reason why. Is it me? Is it the game? Is it my controller? It could be a variety of reasons, but at the end of the day, we shouldn't get stuck on the idea that um, we can't, like, something's impossible or we can't do something. Uh, just because you're losing doesn't mean that's the end of the world. But again, when we start jotting down key learnings and start working on each opportunity individually, while dismissing the thought of losing or being a loser or whatever, whatever these negative thoughts, whatever negative thoughts come up, people will start to notice a difference in their journey to becoming a better fighting game player over time. Right? Did you have anything to say about that?
Damn, my bad. Not really much.
All good.
Yeah, they really just covered everything I honestly wanted to say about those points. So I mean, not I don't really have much different to say there. I was muted, so my bad.
No, you're good. You're good. Um, One other thing that, again, not a lot of people talk about because I mean we'd rather practice our combos, practice our movement, talk about character matchups, blah blah blah. There's a huge neurological aspect to fighting games too, as we mentioned before. You're not just fighting the other person; you're fighting yourself. In a way, in regards to fighting yourself, you're fighting the dopamine that comes forth during these moments. Uh, so, dopamine surges, for context, these are moments where we're close to succeeding. Think back to like Daigo versus Justin. You're really close to killing Daigo. All you need to do is chip him out. All you need to do is just poke out a normal and he's dead. But during these moments where you can smell success, these moments where we're close to succeeding, dopamine can interfere with the fight at hand. And here's how. And sorry, for additional context, dopamine's like the candy in your brain. So when you're close to succeeding, your brain will give you some candy, some dopamine. But getting candy too early, too prematurely can again interfere with the fight at hand. Will make you The candy will make you fat and slow, and someone will come back and dominate you. For context, but with respect to dopamine, while the brain can easily become overconfident, as we've mentioned, it can also be trained to maintain discipline. But it starts with players like engaging in like deep self analysis and introspection and constantly reminding themselves that there's still risks, there's still danger ahead. And again, circling back, in the case of Daigo versus Justin, if only Justin knew, there's still danger ahead. Daigo still has the ability to parry his entire super, although he probably didn't know. Maybe he did know. I'm not too sure. But um, if he did know, then we got to remind ourselves there's still danger ahead. There's still the possibility of losing. We need to consider all these risk factors when in a match. Uh, but dopamine, which again can strike anyone, really can make us blind to these threats. But discipline and understanding how to form discipline in fighting games will help us stay alert and prepared. Um, do you have anything to say about that, Riot, or pretty much self-explanatory?
Oh yeah, self-explanatory. But mostly the discipline part. Because when we are competing for really anything for a while, um, I think having that discipline to kind of be able to when I'm competing a lot of the time, I strive for consistency. So I know we talk about a lot of not worrying so much about the winning or losing because the losing is that's it's means gonna happen eventually. Everybody loses at some point, but it's what you do with it, right? And winning is just going to be the side effect of you taking those losses and learning from them, right? But with that, you also learn to be consistent in exactly what you're learning to get better at, as well as different game plans, whether it's tag combos or even like in today's topic, right? Be able to maintain that lead, maintain that health threshold. Um, so being able to take that discipline and dedication to be consistent in keeping that game plan stagnant in a sense, to be able to still fulfill the win, right, and secure the round or the game. So I think that's an important point that was really good for you to drive home.
Yeah, I feel like discipline will be an entirely different. It can be a segment and it's like an entirely own its own segment. Uh, discipline in fighting games.
Yeah.
That could be an entire podcast. But we'll save that for later. Um, the next thing I want to talk about was, and I've been dying to talk about this ever since we decided to talk about complacency in fighting games. But I want to talk about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because, as in playing fighting games for so long, these are the only two mindsets you really encounter. There is no in between. It's either your training partner is fixed or they have a growth mindset. It's again, playing fighting games for 10 plus years, I've only met one of these two people. Um, with that being said, um, you know, just to explain what fixed mindset is versus growth mindset, uh, for fixed, think of it as, the player who thinks everything they're doing is right. They think they've reached their full potential. They have a tendency to avoid challenges. They're scared of failure and they give up extremely easily. Like at the sight of supreme disadvantage, they just hang up the towel. But I wanted to share a story. Basically, I used to have this old training partner. I'm not going to say their name, but he still pisses me off to this day. And the reason why is because whenever I see them play or even just talking to them, whenever they're in a really bad scenario in any game, doesn't have to be a fighting game, could be in uh again, any game, they automatically deem it as a loss. And it's so annoying because like if we're playing like a team game or if I'm watching them play a single player game, like dude, it's not over until it's over. Um, so it it, it just pisses me off. Like I've always wanted to tell him, like, dude, does it ever cross your mind that if you come back, you'll probably experience, one of the most beautiful feelings ever that life has to offer. The feeling of working extremely hard and coming back from that, the feeling of making out the mud, the feeling of coming out from a really dark place. This is the fixed mindset. The player who fails to understand that there's so much more that they can learn, there's so much more that they can challenge themselves with, and there's so much more out there to life. Like in general, doesn't have to be strictly about a video game or a fighting game. But this is the fixed mindset. Uh, that should pretty much cover the fixed mindset. But now let's talk about the growth mindset. So on the flip side, how do we then escape the fixed mindset and pursue the growth mindset? But first off, what is the growth mindset? It's the belief that our abilities and intellect can be developed through effort, learning, and constant perseverance. This mindset views challenges, failures, and setbacks as opportunities to grow rather than as limitations or signs of inadequacy. So start thinking about different solutions or ways you can improve in a particular area. So, for example, like if you're bad at combos, movement, if your neutral's bad, if you don't quite understand a particular character matchup. The beauty of today's age is that we can look all this up. Whether it's a forum, a Discord, or a YouTube video, the information is there. We just have to seek it out. And what's part of the growth mindset is being able to start that initiative of of telling yourself, Okay, I'm bad at this, therefore I must figure out how to get better at it. Therefore, I must understand, you know, what resources do I have to look up in order to get better? What do I need to do to get better? So on and so forth. Just continuously think about your own development, how you can develop, how you can maintain this developmental stage. Talent and intelligence are not fixed. We can constantly learn about new things. And one thing I want to share was in a book that I started reading. It's called Mastery by Robert Greene, who also wrote 48 Laws of Power, which is also another great book. He mentions that Einstein and Mozart, one of some of the two of the geniuses of our of mankind, they had to spend many years, 10 plus years to be exact, to actually craft their first big invention or symphony. With that said, everyone has to work hard. No one is exempt from not working hard. Push through difficult times instead of giving up when the situation may seem impossible, and stick to that. It's easier said than done, but Ryan, did you I spoke a lot there. Did you have anything to say about any of that?
I'm
Fixed mindset versus growth mindset?
not much. I actually do like the approach. Of course, with this being a mental focused uh podcast, yeah, I think I actually never even heard the difference before, so I actually kind of was just intrigued. But I really want to know who that partner was. Go ahead and drop the name real quick. We need to weed out the Dookie mindsets, bro. I can't lie.
Nah, I can't
Oh
do that. I can't
my
do that.
god.
I can't. But let's just say, I still talk to them, and you know, I've come to a point where as an adult, just learning how to better carry myself. I've learned to, you can have friends that you don't necessarily agree with, but you'll have to put up with them. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I still see them as a friend and I put up with them, but I understand too that habits can kind of rub off on you if if you allow them to. So for example, you know, he's got a fixed mindset, that's his habit. He has habits that flow from a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
I don't let those I don't let those habits, rub off on me. Like I understand that that's possible, but I at least tell myself like, okay, I can't really, go further with this person. I got to watch myself around him. So, um, yeah, it's if I drop the name, no, that's not gonna happen.
Oh good, oh good. I'll try. I tried, guys. I tried, chat. I know we're all wondering, but yeah, I think one thing that I kind of want to point out though is I I don't know for sure. I don't want to make claims like this because it's just a pretty wide margin of people. There's millions of players that play, not only play this genre but that compete, but in anything. But I feel like, especially now, I've seen it a lot of the time. If you're like on Twitter, because that's where everybody and their mother wants to go. But people kind of are already inherently having the fixed mindset. Right? I think I think even the biggest things when it comes to some of these region wars, if that's what you want to call it, how people kind of just like gas up and glaze, other regions like Japan, even some that aren't really talked about that often, like EMEA, EU as well. They I think one of the big reasons as to why some view them as ahead is because of their mindset, right? Their training regimens, right? Compared to a lot of the NA players, they just have a fixed mindset. Oh, it's a bad matchup, but I just never gonna win.
Exactly.
You can say I'm wrong, but you can't. So that's a funny thing. But yeah, so I think it goes deeper than that. I think people just already coming into not the genre but just life. They just have the fixed mindset, right? They just think this is how it is. This is gonna be, right? And granted, I'm the same way. I mean, not for fighting games, but there are a lot of things where I kind of just accept it for how it is. You know, I don't really see a point, or I don't feel like wasting energy and trying to change it. Granted, sometimes that's not good. Other times it's legitimately like, you can't fix it. But something as like small as like, you know a bad matchup, or even like we talked about how last week talking about some, bad moves being deemed as already bad when you just don't know how to use it, right? Um, you can't write it off as like a waste of time, so I think it's kind of crucial to understand that having a fixed mindset is just going to leave you stagnant, and leave you forever having this void of, being in a plateau, or just feeling like, you're just not going to get better, or in some mud, right? But nonetheless, I don't recall, but if we haven't already, then we're gonna be going into more detail how to, transfer that into a growth mindset, which obviously is gonna be pretty hard to do. But I think once you kind of unlock that key of how to transfer your mindset, to having that growth, then you'll easily see. You might even see like a skyrocket in your skill and your perception of things, which I think is the main goal here. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the matter.
Yeah, I would have to say it's probably going to be the hardest thing a person will do is figuring out for themselves how they can transition from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Because keep in mind too, this is all done in the mind, and our body may not intercept it as easily as we may think. Our body may even reject it because, the body gravitates to what we're used to. It's it teaches us to be comfortable when we're already, in a good place. So when we introduce these uh I guess these different ways of thinking and living, I don't expect anyone to do so very easily. It's again, I suspect it'll probably be one of the hardest things a person will do, but it'll also be one of the best investments people will participate in for themselves. And on the note of, getting into a growth mindset, here's a few points that we can suggest that people may want to engage in to develop that growth mindset easier. Uh, I know I was hounding on my training partner earlier, but at the end of the day, which brings us to our first point of this: surround yourself with people who think in a growth with a growth mindset. Train with them, even people who are not as skilled as you. Train with the people that have this mindset. It's a very powerful thing to do because what happens is the mindset not only maintains itself within that circle, but the habits that they bestow on themselves and other people will rub off on you as well. It'll help you maintain that growth mindset. Engage in activities you are naturally interested in, which may help you develop this skill of perseverance and this growth mindset. For me, it was, going to the gym, um, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, both of which are things I hate doing. I really do. But at the end of the day, I see its benefits and I understand that I can develop discipline from engaging in these activities. Have I grown to like it? Sure, but I still hate it every now and then. But I know that it helps develop discipline for me. So whatever that hobby is or that skill is that helps you develop that perseverance, engage in it more so it can help you bring you to a better place. Uh, I know I brought up two books earlier, but that also brings me to my point here. Read more books. People don't understand the amount of resources we have outside of YouTube, ChatGPT, blah blah blah. There's still a lot of books out there that can educate us more than a YouTube video. Educate yourself on the things that you suffer from. So, like, if you suffer from, the psychological aspect that we've talked about extensively here, if you struggle with, you know, um, I guess the mindset needed for athletes, if you want to know more about that, there's so many books on that. Um, and lastly, be open to challenges. There's so many people out there who will refuse a challenge. For what reason? I'm not sure, but it's only through challenges that we can ascend these plateaus that Riot was talking about earlier. It'll also start the process by just engaging in small or large tasks that will help your mental or physical growth in just about anything. At this point, we're not even talking about video games. We're talking about this can be applied to anything really. Um, but on the subject of fighting games, participate in that tournament, challenge that one player, do that first to 10, ask someone for help or a VOD review, challenge yourself against similar skilled opponents and see how you do. Maybe they're not so similar skilled after all. Maybe they're better than you now. You won't know until you fight them. Just because you can see them play doesn't mean if you can, doesn't necessitate the idea that you can beat them. Challenge people who are lesser skilled or just as skilled or more skilled than you. Take that challenge. Um, that's all I had for this point. But Riot, if you had anything to extend off that.
Not much. Yeah, yeah. Again, you pretty much covered everything that was that really needed to be said. I don't have that much different to add.
Um, I guess on that note, we did have one last point. We are trying to wrap up a little bit earlier because we realized the last episode was quite long, so I want to make sure that we try and wrap things up like maybe like before an hour would be great. But we're trying. We're still
Oh,
learning.
yep, doing pretty bad right now. We're going for that. No, like,
We were doing bad.
no, we got 3 minutes to an hour.
Okay. So the
It's
last
fine.
point, I'll cut out a lot of points and make it less than an hour. But this brings us to our last point. Uh, we've talked about complacency. We've talked about getting comfortable. We've talked about many bad things that can happen if you're too comfortable or too complacent or anything of the sort. How do we then break free from complacency in fighting games or anything really? Uh, as we mentioned before, it starts with self awareness. A lot of people are not self aware, and honestly, it's so sad now that I'm thinking about it because they think they're doing everything right, but they don't understand everything wrong is happening to them, and they're doing it to themselves. That's so sad to think about. Like for example, um, someone's hurting themselves and you're telling them that they're hurting themselves, but they just refuse to acknowledge it. Like they refuse to acknowledge that they have these deep cuts on their back, and you're telling them that, but they don't want to believe you. They don't want to listen to you. But dude, you're like bleeding out of your back. Like you got to do something. So self awareness, recognizing complacency often requires deep self examination. So like take things you can do, like you can probably start journaling. uh if you make a mistake, write it down. I messed up this combo, I dropped this combo 3 times, I messed up my movement pattern, I have no idea how to fight this matchup, my corner game is garbage, um this player kept blocking me, my mix-ups weren't working. There's always going to be a problem, but it always starts with writing that problem down. That's the first step. That's always going to be the first step. Second thing is goal setting. So setting goals, um, small or big, doesn't matter. I would say if anyone's trying to break this cycle, start with small goals. Uh, Maybe if you're, I think ranked is good in goal setting. It's quite tangible. If you're like gold 2 in Street Fighter 6, try and get to gold 3. See what it took to get to gold 3, for example. Um, but constantly set goals, small or big, to reignite your motivation in fighting games. Uh, Third thing, external feedback. Look for people to help you out. Look for coaches. Go to discords, ask people for help. But on the topic of feedback, also look for feedback yourself. Like if you're practicing something, uh, and you're messing it up, look for those small nuances in order to improve. So, for example, like if I'm practicing a combo and I keep dropping it, try something new every time, or start noticing the small improvements you're making each day. These giving yourself feedback is critical. Um, Next thing, and on the topic of small goals, celebrate small wins. You don't have to win Evo to give yourself a pat on the back. You can reward yourself for hitting small milestones. Recognizing progress in any which way can help build motivation and build momentum. uh I think this is so the next one. This is important for me, at least. Create accountability. So share goals with a friend, coach, or mentor, and schedule regular check-ins. Knowing someone else is watching your progress motivates you to stay on track. So one thing I did, um, when I was training in fighting games, I would always tell people or my training partners, like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm focusing on. This is what I'd like to improve on. And I tell them, and they would look out for it in my matches. And if they spotted something positive or negative, they would tell me. This is such a great way to keep that fire going, keep that motivation up, but also keep yourself accountable, because, if you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to work on my defense, but you do nothing to work on your defense, what are you doing? Keep yourself accountable. If you say you're going to do something, do it. So again, keep yourself accountable. Uh, this is a really important one for me too. Embracing discomfort. And I know we've talked about this in the first pod, but getting used to losing, but turning it into, like, not seeing it as losing, but seeing it as learning. It's a very valuable skill, not just in fighting games, but intentionally put yourself in situations where you feel challenged. Start small and gradually tackle bigger discomforts. Constantly challenge yourself, but figure out psychologically how you can embrace discomfort and be comfortable with discomfort, how to be comfortable in discomfort. And lastly, change your training circle. I know we talked about this in the last pod as well, but if you're with training partners who are like, you know, making fun of you or teasing you for losing, or, you know, not celebrating your wins, and only there for your losses, and not encouraging you to do better. I don't know whatever else on that topic. If they're just not there for you, you got to find a different circle. If they're not helping you improve, you're gonna have to find new friends. Being around motivated people inspires you to manage your energy and mindset. So if you're not experiencing this, again, change your circle, find new friends, find new training partners, join a Discord, join a Reddit, join a subreddit. Look look for people with a growth mindset. That was a lot. Um, but Ryan, did you have anything to talk about regarding any of those topics? So self awareness, goal setting, feedback, small wins, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually forgot. I wanted to talk about the awareness part in the last segment over the fixed versus growth mindset. Yeah. I think with any problem, the first step is always recognizing that you have one, right? Recognizing that you have that fixed mindset, recognizing that you have a pretty poor training regimen. uh, I think that's gonna be the first step, and kind of just accepting that that's the reality of where where your mind is, and then being able to start planning on how you want to go about fixing it, and whatever remedies you need to do to get rid of it. So of course that would be, like you said, doing the goal setting, feedback, small win stuff, um, as well as I want to actually emphasize the training circle one, especially because I mentioned earlier that a lot of players have that fixed mindset. But with that also, of course, you obviously know better than me, but from the stories I hear as well, I mean, it's just different now in terms of how players grind and the average the average amount of dedication and passion when it comes to actually wanting to improve. You don't see a lot of exhibition sets. You don't see a lot of even players doing like a first to 30, 50, 100. I know Lappers a few weeks ago was saying the same thing. Like a lot of players are just essentially boring. They don't want to grind. They don't want to do a first 100. They're just week, do a first of three, and then rage quit, do a one and done, back out. Like, there's not a lot of players who are willing to, do. Now, granted, I wouldn't want to do a set like that personally. I can settle for just doing like a first to 10, maybe like 13, 15, and that'll be enough info for me. Because I just think anything longer, really anything longer like a first to 7, depending on who you're fighting, I just think there's not a lot of info that could be given. But it's all personal at the end of the day. I know he was fighting. I think it was May Jumpy and Nago. And they played the full first 100. There were a bit of technical issues, but she still came back and still ran the set. So things like that. That's she's gonna go far if she has that mentality, right? And granted, it was like I don't even remember. I don't remember if she took a single game, but you know even players in the first to 5, like they'll be demoralized getting 5-0. It's a different. It requires a different breed to even be willing to go even more than 5, right? So having that training circle and being willing to put yourself in the ringer while trying to effectively learn strategies, how to actually move around with your character, learn the matchup, how does your character play neutral, basically being bees, things of that nature, right? It just comes down to wanting to have that that growth mindset, that drive. So I think that's just something that's just missing entirely. But lastly, I also wanted to point out the small the small wins feature, right? I don't know why Absolute had had this random idea to just think of this when I hit my first rejump in DBFZ and I legit just ran around my kitchen. It's just like Cause it's like, bro, I don't care what anybody says, bro. Like, I don't know why it's just like unnecessarily hard, bro. Yo, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to really just highlight in that the last point, because I think those are just a couple things that are just missing in people and players in general, which is very important.
Wait, do you have the clip where you hit the rejump?
It's somewhere deep in the bowels of my Twitch highlight page or Twitch clips page. Um,
So it exists.
yeah, it's still there at the dig, unfortunately, because for some reason Twitch is very wonky and whack and trash when it comes to finding clips. I wish there was a way to just like filter, but it's whatever. Uh, Also, sorry stream for the lack of Nick's camera. I am like, you know what? I'll find it, and it'll be what's it called? Probably in the video. Probably. I'll find it, but yeah. Also, appreciate the big buddy raid from King Giovanni. Um, I've been playing chess a lot now lately. I'm not very good yet, but it helps me work on my awareness. As that improves, I get better. It's really good for me, and it will help me later in life too, whether in fighting games, Valorant, or even if I go back to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. Maybe I'll get higher than third place in regional. Yep, that's all it takes. Just keep grinding, keep researching, keep finding whatever top chess players in your area or online, and just keep researching. It's really all we're trying to do here. Try to create new avenues for people to be more open with having new ways and methods to improve. Because like Nick said, we are in an age where there is quite a lot of resources. I know I saw one Twitter hot take of that new trend going around, because we need our annual hot takes trend. But there was one person said something along the lines of like they said there's not a lot of like resources for new players, and I just had to just like flinch so hard. What are you talking about? Like, I am fairly relatively new to the scene still. Like I've only been in like since 2019 playing DBZ, and I can tell you that is like a billion% cap as hell. I like like we have YouTube, Dust Loop, Twitter hashtags, Discord, Reddit. Like I mean, there's definitely more than I'm not even remembering. We have a replay theater where people upload high level replays, or not even high level replays, any replay from like any tournament, VOD or whatever. So there's definitely a lot of things that are out there. You just have to, pick up your mini computer and find it, right? So, but that's really all I'd say about the
I,
matter.
I think too, maybe they're, I mean, playing devil's advocate, maybe they're just too overwhelmed with how much information there really is.
That's fair.
Like they, there's, I think I said this on a stream a long time ago, but you know, having a lot of information before us is actually, it can be our downfall as well, because in some cases we may not know like what source is the best source, or we may not even know where to start. So if I were in their position, I too would be like, where the hell do I start? Do I start with combos? Do I start with finding my character? How do I play my character? How do I get better? Like what path do I take to get better? Like there's, to be fair,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's not very intuitive for sure. Yeah, I think it can be that. And of course, also you being a new player and still kind of like still learning what is what exactly. It might also be hard to tell, what exactly is worth, what exactly is, feasible with my character right now. Especially with the resources I did mention, they are ran by humans, people. So and some of them aren't the most credible, to be real. So yeah, I definitely get that point. But yeah, just to say, lack thereof, I think that's a like absurd reach. But yeah, I can definitely agree with the fact that there just a lot of the fact that there are so much resources to help people kind of come back the lack of knowledge that they have. Yeah, I think it's, even for me, like I kind of was in that point of like, okay, so I'm using Twitter hashtags, and it's just like, is this even good? And then even I think we're seeing right now with release of Dizzy as well. So with the release of Dizzy, we're seeing this like everybody's posting like the same like tag, the same combos, like guys we know already. It's like so I can definitely see that point. So that is fair.
Yeah, we should probably have like a segment where we talk about how new fighting game players should start off.
Yeah.
Because I know, what, there's a lot of YouTube videos that discuss that, but at the end of the day, everyone's start is going to be different. Everyone's going to gravitate towards something different. Maybe like they gravitate towards combos first, which is what I gravitated towards first. A lot of people gravitate towards combos first. Maybe they gravitate towards, I don't know, just playing story mode the whole time. Maybe they gravitate towards just frolicking in training mode and just figuring out things from there. Everyone's start is going to be different, but at the end of the day, you know, I think there is a specific way to start, but again, not all people have talked about it. So maybe we can talk about that on another episode.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be worth a combo. Honestly, like even effectively using training mode or even effectively using like anything. Yeah, I think it'd be worth. Oops.
Yeah, I think that pretty much concludes what we want to talk about in terms of complacency in fighting games, or in general, I suppose. But just as a recap, so in the beginning, we were called moments where in fighting games where players got too complacent, or complacency played a role in their downfall. So we talked about, Evo moment number 37. We talked about Daigo versus Justin. Talked about Ricky Ortiz versus Wolf Crone in SF4. Ushigen versus Ogawa and Exerd Evo 2015. And right, what was that last one? Sorry.
It was Killer Kobe and Monarch.
Right. So we brought up those moments to help provide imagery behind what we mean by complacency. Then we moved on to talking about what complacency is in a match and in fighting games. Uh, we talked about people being overcome with overconfidence, ego, being a bit too relaxed. And on the flip side, uh, the good players will become aware that complacency can strike them at any moment. And that one wrong decision, which may seem like a minor discrepancy, can snowball into much larger problems. So we can't take light to wrong decisions we make. Uh, Next, we talked about the brain's role in overconfidence. So we talked about pattern recognition. Um, so when we're used to winning in specific situations, we tend to get comfortable. This can become a pattern, uh, but uh, again, each situation is different. Every opponent is different, and so we have to give everyone their due respect and not just let up in a potentially unforgiving situation. We see this a lot too among players. They get addicted to being comfortable. They get addicted to the comfort of victory, um, and they prioritize comfort over maintaining their status of being victorious over wins. Uh, Next, we went into how dopamine plays a part in fighting games, especially in the moments where we're close to winning. Um, Dopamine comes forth, especially when we're close to succeeding, and can interfere with the fight at hand. Um, and so, with respect to dopamine, um, while it can be, while it can easily become, while the brain can easily become overconfident, we can also train it to become more disciplined. But again, it starts with becoming aware, self-analysis, and discipline. Next, one my favorite topic was the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. So, fixed mindset, people who think they're in their final form, they've reached their full potential, they avoid challenges, fear failure, give up easily, versus the growth mindset, which is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and consistent perseverance. Um, And lastly, we spoke about how to break free from complacency. So, self awareness, goal setting, external feedback like coaching or training partners, celebrating small wins, creating accountability, embracing discomfort, and changing your training circle to help you uh, obtain the or grow your growth mindset, or help achieve the growth mindset. That's all we spoke about today. Right? Did I miss anything? Or
Don't believe so. Pretty much covered all of the main topics as well as the effective ways to break free the complacency. So yeah, pretty sure that was it. Um,
awesome, awesome.
yep. So with that being said, once again, thank y'all for tuning in for today's episode of the 623 podcast. Uh, any last words you want to say to the people before we head out, Nick?
No. Once again, if you have any feedback, let us know on Discord. We're going to be posting on SoundCloud and YouTube. If you'd like to hear us talk about a specific topic next, let us know. But yeah, we're hopefully going to do this once a week. Hopefully, we'll see. But stay tuned on Discord, and we'll stay connected.
Yes, that being said, things are again. Oh, yep. Yes, it is apps. Yep. That being said, once again, thank you for tuning in. Hit that exclamation point 623 to get a direct link to our SoundCloud and YouTube. These will be out relatively soon, as soon as I get the footage out. But yeah, that's all it from me. Any feedback, they hit either me or Nick up on our socials. And yeah, with that being said, we are